Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
I saw Dogman fight Bigfoot from out of my window, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. I live in an area of Pennsylvania where sightings of both Bigfoot and Dogman are fairly common. I have a few friends who had sightings, and I'll tell you what they told me. I personally never saw either of the cryptids until I saw both of them at once. One of my friends is so well known in this area that if I were to describe this person in the slightest way, everyone around here would know exactly who I was talking about. So I'm not even going to tell you what gender they are, just that they were driving on a private street near here. It was a block with houses on the right and an undeveloped woods on the left. Now I know you're thinking that something came out of the woods, but no. What this person told me personally that they saw was a particularly messed up looking Sasquatch racing out of a space between two houses, looking over his shoulder behind him as he ran. His fur was all messed up and he was limping, but it was not a man in a costume because the creature had to be over 8 feet tall. My friend told me that the height and size of the monster took their breath away. At first, they thought it was some kind of a puppet or maybe a man on stilts, but the torso was too long for a man, and the face, which looked like it had just been in a fight, was far too expressive and animated to have been some kind of a mask. That sighting happened only around 11 blocks from where I used to live at the time, so it really shook me up, and I was on the lookout for Bigfoot from then on. I think they told me that story when I was 18 or 19, so that was 15 or more years ago when it happened. The extra creepy part of the story to me back then was that I was wondering what could mess up an 8-foot tall Sasquatch. At the time, I figured it must be an even bigger Sasquatch. I mean, what else was out there? I soon found out. Well, not that soon, I guess. But a few years after that, my own father told me he was stopped at a railroad crossing, and in his rearview mirror, he saw the largest wolf he had ever seen in his life. It looked like the monster from the original American Werewolf in London, and it lumbered along, coming closer to his vehicle. So Dad looked down the tracks, and the train was coming. He couldn't go forward, and the huge wolf was coming up behind him, casually and slowly. He hit the button on his door that closed up all his windows automatically and locked all his doors. Whatever noise that made freaked the big wolf out. It crouched low to the ground, and even through the closed windows, Dad could hear the thing growling. He wondered if the monster saw his car as another animal, or if the thing understood that he was the only biological part of the car. The train was getting closer, and the red light was on, and the clanging alarm was sounding, and all of this did not calm the wolf down any at all. In fact, it agitated him so much that the creature stood up like a bear Dad said it held its front legs out in front of it and splayed the claws from its paws out wide in a threatening manner. It was making terrible snarling and almost hissing sounds, and its eyes looked insane. Dad said he was so scared he actually beeped his horn at the train to speed it up, as though that made any sense at all. I asked Dad to describe the creature when it was standing, but he said he was mainly focused on how close it was and how soon that train was going to pass. He said he didn't even spend a second of time studying the creature. He just kept saying it was the American werewolf in London. He saw the American werewolf in London, but he saw it in Pennsylvania. So the train passed and the wooden barrier was still not lifted. Dad said his palms were sweating so much it was hard to grip the steering wheel. As the barrier began to slowly lift, Dad hit the gas pedal and sped through it, breaking it off as he sped past. He looked in the rearview mirror to see if he could catch the expression on the monster's face as he realized Dad had gotten away. But he couldn't see the monster anywhere behind him. Had it run away? Then something bumped into the car so hard it almost knocked it into the other lane. Staring out to his right, Dad could make out the wolf running alongside his car. Not knowing what else to do, Dad just went faster until he was doing something crazy like 70 or something. I asked him how fast he had to go to get away from the monster, and he said he went as fast as he could. I tried to get him to be more specific, but he never understood my question. I wanted to know what the max speed of the creature was. It seems as though this wolf ran on all fours and only stood on its hind legs. I'm not sure if Dad ever actually saw him walk bipedally. In other words, it was very large, but otherwise a normal, if giant wolf, that would stand on its hind legs to intimidate others it perceived as a threat. It's possible it could walk or run on its hind legs, but I don't think Dad ever specifically saw it do that. Now, I have a friend we can call Squirrel for the sake of telling this. Squirrel likes to go on long nature walks, and he has a sort of a new age side to him. He always used to feel he was communing with the spirits of nature when he was out in the forest, so he rarely prepared as well for his hikes as he should have. I always told him, just because you've been lucky so far doesn't mean you'll always be lucky, but he wouldn't listen, and he relied on the spirits of nature to protect him. So, one day, Squirrel was at my place and we were watching TV, and I wanted to watch a nature documentary. Squirrel told me how he's sick of nature, and I almost fainted. I mean, all this guy ever talked about was nature. So obviously something must have happened. I had to drag it out of him, but basically what it was that he had a frightening encounter with a Sasquatch, and since then, he's afraid of the woods. He told me he was hiking along a path, and he got lost. He was feeling thirsty, and it was starting to get dark. He checked the GPS on his phone and saw that he was over an hour away from where he thought he was, and that he was going to have to hike all the way back quickly or get stuck in the dark. Before setting off back, he quieted his mind and prayed to the spirits of the woods to guide him back and keep him safe until he could get to civilization and rehydrate. Then he set off jogging in the direction he needed to go. The feeling of tiredness was setting in more quickly than he expected, and he mentally prayed while running. There was a sudden and surprising crash of leaves, and an enraged kind of screaming coming from the woods behind him. Turning, Squirrel saw this really tall, very darkly colored, hairy caveman. He said the skin and the fur or hair were both absolutely ebony black, unlike any animal he had ever seen. Of course, seeing this screaming animal running toward him gave Squirrel a new kind of energy, and he found himself running impossibly fast, or what seemed impossible to him. He told me it felt like his heart was literally going to blow up out of his chest, yet somehow he was able to keep running for what must have been several minutes. The creature sounded like it was immediately behind him, so he had no choice but to try to keep going. Inevitably, he tired and tripped over his own feet, crashing to the ground in a pile of leaves. He was gasping for air desperately, unable to get up or do anything except try to get air back into his lungs. Turning around on his back and looking up, Squirrel saw the hairy caveman walk up to him. He said the caveman was panting hard too, and he had to catch his breath before screaming at Squirrel on the forest floor. He said he screamed at him like he was lecturing him before firing him or something. He said it was like as if your father was angry at you, but was also a savage half-simian proto-human. I asked Squirrel, how did you get away? And he said, I didn't, really. I asked him what that meant, and he said he just fainted when the Bigfoot thing was shouting at him. It was too much for him to take, and he just became unconscious. When he woke up, it was morning. Birds were singing, the sun was starting to come up, and all sorts of bugs were crawling inside his clothes. That, according to Squirrel, was the last time he ever went into the woods. The next time I heard about a cryptid was from an ex-girlfriend of mine we can call Martha. She told me she was driving home through this forested area at night, and she saw something a lot like what my father saw, a really huge wolf. She told me she thought it was a dire wolf like we had seen them talk about on a TV show one time. It was alongside the road, just standing there, watching her. Then, as she drove closer, the immense wolf dropped its head lower to the ground and started barking at her. She hit the gas and sped past the beast, and it ran after her, just as the other one had done with my father. The difference this time was that this wolf ran after her on its hind legs. She said it was reaching out with its front arms, which she said ended in hands with long nails or claws coming out of them. She could see it making swipes at the rear of her car, but did not hear it ever make contact. She told me that when she got over 60 miles an hour, the creature faded back into the distance. So it sounds like the wolf might be able to run faster than anything is supposed to be able to run. I wonder still, what if it is a dire wolf or some sort of descendant or offshoot of it? What if that's actually what Dogman is? I certainly can't answer that question for myself, because I never saw anything like what my father or Martha saw. Oh yes, I saw a Dogman, but it was just that, a dog-like man. It was not a wolf. It never ran on all fours. It had primate-style legs, not canine legs. It was a really disgusting thing, like a lower form of Sasquatch that even Bigfoot finds sickening. But this is all my opinion. I should just tell you what I saw instead of telling you what I think about it. Okay, my parents were out of town in Florida on a vacation, and my brother was away in college, so I was home alone watching the dogs and going to school. I normally slept in the basement, but for these 2 weeks, I was staying up in my brother's unoccupied room on the second floor of the house. I could hear everything that was going on much better from there, and I could see what was going on out in front of and on one side of the house from there. Like I could see if someone was coming to visit because we at that time were the only house down our end of the road. They've built 2 more since then, but this happened in 2005, I think. I was glad to be alone since my girlfriend's family had moved out of town and she broke up with me because she didn't want to have a long-distance romance. I was kind of down. I didn't even recharge my cell phone, or when I did, I kept it turned off most of the time. This was my way to work out of depression. Just go to school, come home, do my chores and homework, play with the dogs, then go to sleep. I didn't even watch much TV during that time. I kind of wanted to reset myself, like shut down and reboot in a way. So one night, I was sitting in my room, or my brother's room on the second floor, and I was just sitting at the window and looking out at the night. Mostly I was looking at the sky, but I was also watching the trees blowing in the wind and literally not thinking about anything at all. Just drinking in the night silently, both outside and inside. My peace was broken as I heard what I thought was a woman screaming. Surprised, I stood up quickly and almost knocked over a lamp near me. It sounded like a woman was screaming in the forest across the street. I ran downstairs and noticed that instead of being at the front windows barking, both our German shepherds were cowering over by the door to the basement. I opened it and they ran downstairs to hide. What did they know that I didn't? I had been all charged up to go rescue the girl in the woods when I came down those stairs, but I had imagined having 2 German shepherds at my side to do it. If they were too scared to go out there, maybe I should be too. I wandered toward the front of the house to see what I could see, and what I saw was a really scary face coming out of the woods and heading toward my house. I screamed and I saw a huge hairy monster body follow the hideous face out of the trees. I closed the basement door to protect our dogs. Then I ran upstairs to my brother's room and locked the door. Looking out the front windows, I saw the single most unbelievable thing any human being could ever possibly see. There was a Bigfoot standing in the middle of the street, looking like he was standing on some kind of a play street. It looked tiny under him. This giant, black, hairy man-thing was facing off against the ugliest creature I have ever seen. Both of these things were ugly, but the one that wasn't a Bigfoot was nauseating to look at. It drooled, and it had... Oh, it's so disgusting just to think about it. Maybe I should leave it to your imagination. But the thing had a kind of a dog head. It looked like a man wearing a really dirty old sheepdog costume. It had legs like a man in a costume, not like a dog, but it had big old floppy dog ears on either side of its head, not monkey ears like a Bigfoot would have. So I would say this thing was a dog man in the truest sense, not a wolf man or a dire wolf at all. Whatever either of these things were, they both were really agitated. The dog man seemed angry, and the Bigfoot seemed scared. It let out a scream, and it sounded nothing at all like Bobo from TV, believe me. It sounded like a wounded woman. This was what was making that horrifying scream earlier. Somehow, my dogs knew what was making the noise. Had they seen this Sasquatch before, or others like him? So the dog thing charged the ape thing, and they tumbled on the ground, making absolutely terrifying noises, snarling and growling and screaming and screeching. It was painful to listen to it. I wished I could go console my dogs, who must have been freaking out, but I had to keep myself safe and hope this fight got taken elsewhere. Now you might be asking if I got any video of all this. The only thing I had with me that would even take pictures was my old cell phone, which would have taken tiny, dark, grainy pictures. Remember, this was 2005. I did go and try to turn it on, only to learn that the battery had to be charged up again. I set it to do that, but it took hours, and so the answer is no. I got no photos or video of any of this. Something the dog man did while I was messing with my phone really got the Bigfoot angry. Like something he did cross the line in Sasquatch terms, because all of a sudden, he just started wailing on this dog-headed creep, just kicking his butt using everything at his disposal. Now it was the dog man's turn to squeal like he was hurt, and he ran away, back in the direction he had come from. The ape man immediately followed. That was the whole story from my point of view. I never got to see either of the monsters that everyone else was getting to see, and then, all of a sudden, I saw both. Although, when I think about it, I'm not sure really what I saw. Like maybe the messed up looking squatch that my famous friend saw was the same thing as the dog-faced monster I saw. The dire wolf man was definitely different from what I saw. So maybe the kind of dog man I saw is actually a kind of Bigfoot? I really have no idea. All I know is that I saw Dogman fight Bigfoot from out of my window.
Do you have a scary story you want us to read on the show? Just call our voicemail hotline, 804-LIST-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. And now for something completely scary.
Bigfoot attacked my tiny house. Scary Stories by Peter Bernard, Volume 1. Now available on Amazon in paperback.
Come back for more scary stories.